It is April 12th, and this is this week's edition of the Big Country Wheat Update that we've been doing. Was the third update that we've put out here at our office. This week, we're joined by Donna Hughes with StoneX Financial. I appreciate Donna being on here. Donna works StoneX, and they do a lot of commodity trading. She works with a lot of farmers and ranchers throughout Texas and other parts of the United States. Donna is right here in Abilene. She's a great asset to our program and also serves on our Taylor County Extension Ag Committee as well. So thanks, Donna, for joining me today for this week's wheat update. This one's going to be all about what's going on in the markets and what do we see movement-wise in price and what's driving things and whatnot. But first off, let's recap from a couple of weeks ago. We mentioned a freeze that occurred primarily north of Abilene. There were some areas that dropped below freezing for a few hours. We don't like to see that kind of cold weather at this stage in the game on our wheat crop, but good news is so far we're not seeing too much damage, very little that I'm aware of and that I've seen and other folks I've talked to that are out in the fields. So maybe we dodged a bullet there on any freeze damage to our Big Country wheat crop. That being said, Donna, USDA released their USDA released their crop conditions from around the country like they do each week. Can you kind of recap what you're seeing from that?
Sure. On the U.S. level, unfortunately, they're looking at higher ending stocks. And so generally with higher ending stocks, that's going to put pressure into the market. Seasonal average price that they're looking at is reduced about a nickel from where it was at last count. 23-24 projected ending stocks were raised 25 million bushels to 698, and I think the trade was looking for somewhere around 690, 695, so a little bit more than what we had anticipated. On a global level, needless to say, there's plenty of world wheat around, and unfortunately, Russia, Ukraine, that area of the globe happens to have substantial supplies, and they have the cheapest prices. And so with that, it does put pressure on our markets here in the U.S. And projected world ending stocks are coming in at 258.3 million, and that's down about 0.6 million from last month's estimate, but still not quite enough to get things moving higher in the market. And so with that, it was thought of as neutral to bearish report. And so with that, wheat futures have been pretty much trading in a range, somewhere between that 570 and 590 level. And so with that, we didn't get much of a breakout in either direction, so we're left to be trading within that range.
So, ending stocks, they're trending a little lower, but just not enough to drive anything price increase right now is kind of a big takeaway from that. And
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The more ending stocks that we have, that puts pressure on the market. If they were to have reduced ending stocks, then that tells us that our supplies are tighter. And hopefully what would go along with that would be increased exports. But unfortunately, our exports have not been all that stellar because our global competitors are priced more they're cheaper than we are, and it's we have to consider like freight rates and all of that as well. And when you have situations like what's going on in the Black Sea, the Suez Canal, as far as like shipments to China, that's always a factor when it comes to pricing.
Yeah, it is certainly for sure. And even the last, what we're going on in year 2 of this Ukraine, Russia conflict. But as you mentioned, there's still a lot of wheat that's produced over there, and a lot of wheat that can be sold on the market at a cheaper price, evidently, than what we can export it out of our ports. Now, speaking of reports, the WASDE report came out this week. Do you have any info on what we can glean from that?
Well, like I said, with the WASDE, I mean, we really didn't get much difference. We also had the prospective planting report that came out the end of March. And so we were looking to see if USDA was going to do anything in the way of major changes with the WASDE, and they didn't. They didn't do so much with corn and soybeans in some areas either. And so with that, basically it's been weighing on the grains market.
So that's certainly not much change there, I guess. And we're kind of sitting here in a way, maybe stagnant and not necessarily anything, I guess, that could be happening to really push our market in an upwards trend, at least. So
exactly, and we've seen this kind of action with wheat, corn, beans. It's almost as though traders are, they're wanting those updates. They're wanting to see concrete numbers. Feeling comfortable where we're at right now with pricing, and it's going to take something of substance, some type of fundamental issue that's going to make us break out to either way. Now, we do get a bump up in wheat whenever we have some type of military happening in the Black Sea. Ukraine and Russia are, going after each other's infrastructure, either military or power, as far as, substations and things like that. And so, whenever we do get any news on that, which is generally overnight, we'll wake up in the morning and all of a sudden wheat will be in a rally mode, but the headlines don't stick. And so then we start falling back. And what these moves do when they do happen is it provides opportunity for producers, to lock in prices, maybe affecting basis at the elevators in some way. So, certainly opportunities can be had from these price moves.
Yeah, and speaking of price moves, I believe you have a Kansas City wheat chart that you can share with us. So let me stop. Let's switch screens real fast and show the folks that are watching what this chart looks like, and you can kind of get a little more detail of where wheat's coming from, where it's going, kind of give more of a visual idea to that.
Sure. Way up here, up at the top, I mean, that's kind of what we had as, a post-harvest.
Hang on a second, Donna, I don't believe your screen is up.
Hold on 1 second.
There we go. Seeing it now.
Okay, so up at the top there, that was the top of our quote unquote post-harvest rally. And we had a little bit of that, Ukrainian Russian deal to help us along the way. But as you can see, we've come from some pretty lofty levels. And unfortunately, my experience with producers and a number of my broker friends, when we try to have producers do quote unquote something at these levels for next year or for something they may be looking to sell in December, usually the thought is, well, I think I'm going to wait for higher pricing. And, we're just trying to get a good average on our marketing. And so, when you're at levels like this, it's a good idea to think of doing partial, at least something at these levels, what you're trying to do is to get a good average, because we could see back not too long ago, we came down to multi-year lows in the July contract. And the market really hasn't come off too much from that. Again, we've been range bound, trying to figure out what's going on with, the crops out in the Black Sea area. Are they going to be able to grow crops this year? We know that Russia had a substantial crop that they had in storage. And with new crop coming on, just like in our area of the world, they have to move that out in order to store more for new crop. So, that gives us concern that as we get closer to harvest here in the US, that we may see some of that Russian wheat sales accelerate, and that could drive prices even lower than where we're at, or what we typically would see with harvest. So a lot of things to be concerned about. If we take out that low of 544 at the bottom there, around that 540 level, it could mean another leg lower, as we call it. And, unfortunately, that would probably be coming during harvest. And that's, that's typically when everybody's selling.
Yeah, and that doesn't spell good news for our big country farmers as well. Once we hit harvest time, and the harvest time is right here around the corner. We're getting closer every day. We're only, maybe 6 weeks out, possibly, just thinking off the top of my head where we could be. And current conditions, of course, we'll start harvest in Texas earlier than the rest of the country. And, the harvest starts, here in Texas and moves north. Right now, our area, we've talked about that our wheat looks good. Other parts of Texas, it's kind of a mixed bag, especially getting around the San Angelo area. But East Texas looking pretty good. South Texas is decent crop. Moving further north, I believe it's looking good only up the Rolling Plains and into Oklahoma. Donna, you have customers kind of all over. What are you hearing from them as far as current crop conditions?
Well, like you say, Texas conditions, we're hearing exactly what you are as far as the different areas. A month ago, everything looked great, best crop we can remember. And, now it's, well, we really could use that rain. And, we see this all the time. I mean, things change so quickly, but then at the same time, a good rain or two, it'll, bring it back and give it some life. So we're not out of the box yet, so to speak. But we've got some clients up in Kansas, South Central Kansas. It's basically the same situation. Looked like a great crop, and they've been missing those rains, and really need to see some moisture in that area. And going up into like southern Iowa. There's a pretty good drought situation going on up there, affecting the wheat, corn. Cattle producers are affected by it as well, as we know. And anyway, we got to keep it going good in these last few weeks as we come into the the final turn.
And do you think? Of course, domestic production here, if the weather was great, throughout Texas and up through the Midwest, say the weather held and the crop that we're looking at now hangs on, do you think it'll move the needle one way or the other on price?
Depending on, what the crop looks like, if we do get a good crop, we get good yields out of it. And then of course, we have to look at what's going on with exports and demand out of the US. But, those factors work together. Let's say we had, a big crop, everything looks terrific, and we have, a backing off of exports. Well, it's hard to make a sale to an elevator in that way. And, so that you're going to see that affect basis. You're going to see that affect pricing. unfortunately, the good prices, as you want to call it, are in times when things are not so good. So, we need the exports. Everybody would love to see a good crop come to fruition. But, there's pluses and minuses to all of it.
Certainly is. And of course, that goes back to, we mentioned earlier about the USDA, that National Crop Condition Report that they put out. Interesting note about that report. There are producers and a lot of extension agents like myself. I know in Texas, every county extension agent, we do a weekly crop report to USDA, and that's where the USDA aggregates that data and gets the ratings. And I know the ones that I've seen lately, most areas are putting the crop, rating the crop as good, to some excellent, and little in the fair condition, but mostly in the good, because it goes from a fair to good, excellent condition rating. Now let's wrap it up here. Talking back here close to home, pulled some data, acreage data together. Taylor County and the six surrounding counties, we have about 370,000 acres that was certified for grain through the Farm Service Agency, as planted here in these 7 counties. That's not counting other wheat that was planted that may have been certified for grazing early on, but depending on conditions, a few of those acres might be taken to grain. Preliminary estimates, I would jump off and say, if those acres were all harvested and just kind of roundabout average yield, we could be looking at about 7.5 million bushels produced here in our immediate area. That is quite a bit of grain to hit the elevator or elevators coming up here in about 6 to 8 weeks or so. What are producers looking at for cash price? Those guys that maybe just selling directly at the elevator.
We did a meeting last week in Lubbock, and we were fortunate enough to have Dr. Welch join us with his forecast, and I believe he was looking for somewhere at harvest at around 565. And so, that's not too far off from where we are right now. But, again, between now and harvest, things can change, and, we'll have to see how that works out.
Certainly so. Well, and speaking of Dr. Welch, we have him that will be here. He will be here in Taylor County coming up May 3rd at our Big Country Wheat Tour. So encourage folks, if you're watching this, to sign up and come to our wheat tour on May 3rd. We will be meeting that morning at 8 a.m. over around Eula at the Callahan County forage plots. We're going to look at some forage varieties there, and then we'll move down by Tuscola, meet the Taylor County trials, where we have our uniform variety trials. We have about 30 different varieties in that trial down there at Tuscola, where you'll have a chance to go through each one of them. We'll talk about what's performing good this year, and you'll also see what may have underperformed as well. Then we're moving into Tuscola Community Center. That's where Dr. Welch is going to come in. He's going to give a market outlook as he does each year. So it'd be great to hear from him here in Taylor County. Again, that's May 3rd. The Big Country Wheat Tour. You can call the Taylor County office or the Callahan County Extension office to RSVP your spot. It is free for attendees, and we have several sponsors that will thank that day that participate in this, that help make this event free for them as well. So encourage you, May 3rd, Big Country Wheat Tour. Donna, any last thoughts before we wrap up today?
Just wishing everybody the best in getting the wheat, out to harvest, and just keep track of those prices, because they could change pretty quickly.
Certainly can. And what we kind of just in a nutshell talked about today, the prices really hasn't anything going on just here as of late to really push them, but we never know. Something big could happen in the world that could push that. So with that, we'll wrap up. Thanks for watching our Big Country Wheat Update for April 12th, 2024. We appreciate Donna Hughes with StoneX Financial for joining us today, as always, and hope to see you next week. So remember, Wheat Tour May 3rd, and hope to see everyone there as well.